and welcome to another episode of Lily High on Life. And today's guest I'm really excited to introduce you all to. Harley Medcalf, welcome to Lily High on Life.
Thank you, Lily. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I heard you speak yesterday and I was really taken aback because you, grew up in New South Wales, an Aussie boy, have made your mark on the world and have been not just connected but actually worked with virtually every single celebrity in the entertainment world coming out of Melbourne. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, and I won't ask you to list them because the list is just endless. But tell people a little bit about what you're doing today, because you're living back in Sydney, and the things that are exciting you about your life.
Well, if you look at the immediacy of today, this week, I'm actually in Melbourne with an exhibition of the art of Billy Connolly. Billy Connolly's an old friend of mine that I was introduced to in the early 80s, and I became the promoter of his concerts in Australia.
Wow.
I toured Billy 9 times up until his last performance in 2015 and his subsequent retirement. I think in all somewhere around 500 shows over those years, about a million tickets.
And maybe just talk about some of the other people you've worked with in that high celebrity status, because you can't list all of them, but we'll mention them throughout.
Yeah, it kind of goes on forever, but really I started in the international industry. I'd worked for 2 years with Australian artists, and they were from Billy Thorpe, Sherbet, Hush, Max Merritt, a number of Aussie acts, which I loved working for, and I continue to work with Aussie acts. But I got introduced to international talent in 1973, and I started promoting those shows in 1974, and the first 7 months was just, it set how the rest of my life, the next 50 years, was going to run. I worked in 7 months. I worked with B.B. King, Hank Snow and the Rainbow Ranch Boys, John Mayall, John McLaughlin, the Marv Fishnell Orchestra, and unbelievably Frank Sinatra. So this is 93, becoming 1994. So I had this massive introduction. It was today it's like a blur. It's like someone else did that, and following that, I toured Elton John 8 times, Queen, Lionel Richie, a few Rod Stewart tours, the Doobie Brothers, Meatloaf, Little Feat. I mean, it's hard. Dionne Warwick. It's just hard to remember.
Marlene Dietrich as well. And the mind-blowing thing about it is that you did this out of Australia. You didn't have to leave Australia to get involved with all of these exciting international stars.
Yeah, I got to a stage where I would twice a year I would go to Los Angeles and London to meet people and meet agents and talk about it. But my whole life has been built on relationships. A few people I met, mentored me, took me under their wing, liked the way I did business, and they helped me secure these artists. And I wasn't really ever in a competitive environment. The artists toured for me. I mean, people like Meatloaf, who became one of my dearest friends. I worked with him in the 80s and the 90s, and we became friends. Billy Connolly, we became friends.
And that's what I love about what you were talking about yesterday also, was that your life really highlights relationships.
Yeah, my whole life has been about relationships. I mean, firstly, in the mid-70s, I was introduced to a man called Kevin Ritchie, and in funny circumstances, because I was touring with Hank Snow and the Rainbow Ranch Boys, these sort of conservative old Nashville people, very quiet, we ended up sharing a lounge, the Ansett Group Lounge at Adelaide Airport in 1976, and Kevin Ritchie was there with Suzi Quatro, and when we walked in, Hank Snow is a delightful man. I mean, if anyone has seen the Elvis movie, there's Hank Snow. You'll know who he is. He was Colonel Tom Parker's big act, and he was top of the bill. And when Colonel Tom found Elvis, he put Elvis on the bottom of the bill, and before long, he had to kick Hank off the top and put Elvis. So that was Hank Snow. I mean, quite a legendary man himself in the industry. So my job became sort of separating the rock and rollers who were sort of sledging Hank's hairpiece and their clothes, and as the rock and rollers do, having fun. And in the middle of this, I met Kevin Ritchie.
So when you were meeting all of these people who were established celebrities at the time, how did you go into it? Because that's part of creating relationships with people, is how you react to them, how they react to you. Do you remember, what your mindset was?
Firstly, my father gave me a good advice. Look him in the eye and give him a firm handshake. And that's the way, when you approach someone, I'll look in, I give you a good handshake. Hi, I'm Harley. How are you going? And it just opens. I'll talk to anybody. But you find, these artists, they're just normal people. A lot of people stand off, and they like you to say hello. They don't want you to be stand off or be shy. So I learned just to engage and introduce yourself, look them in the eye. That was good advice from my dear old dad.
And you treated them the way you would a mate back in Australia, or differently?
Well, that's what we do in Australia. We're all the same. We're all just people. We all put our pants on in the morning. So, I had the usual anxieties of a younger person, but I was able to cross that bridge pretty quickly.
And amazingly successfully, because you repeated it over and over again with different people, which means there's an authenticity and a realness in you and who you are and how you presented yourself.
Well, Kevin Ritchie, who brought me into his company, Duet, in 1976, he was sort of a revered person. He was the original, I will shake your hand and we will do a deal and I will stand by that deal. He's an amazing person, and he had this relationship with Elton John and his manager John Reed, and there was never a contract. They just shook hands with Kevin. This is the deal. Let's get it done. So,
wow, that's really wow.
Taught by Kevin to be respectful, to be honest, to be transparent, to work hard. He looked after me and helped me and drove me and put me in opportunities where I was tested. And, the whole thing through this whole period in the sort of the 70s into the early 80s, I just considered myself as lucky. Look where I am. I'm so lucky. I was never thinking, how did I get here or where I'm going to go? I was just, this is great. I'm lucky. Let's just keep going.
And you were building on the values that your father gave you as well.
I was building on those values, and I was learning. I watch people closely. I watch what they do, what they say, how they conduct themselves. But, still for me, I had no plans. When I left school in 1969, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I literally fell into this business by renting a little hall on the northern beaches of Sydney at Mona Vale, hiring a couple of bands, and I made $50. I was like, oh my God, because I was working as a tree lopper for 49, 5 days a week, chopping wood. And here I am on Saturday night. So I thought, well, what if I can do it on Friday night? So there was a sort of a catalyst, and my father would look at me and shake his head and go, you need a trade. When this hobby finishes, you're going to have nothing. So learn a trade. And I'm like, no, I'm too busy. And it just came along. Billy Thorpe was one of the first people who encouraged me. He did a show for me at Mona Vale. I paid him $200 and said, come back next month. No, I'm not driving from Melbourne for $200, but if you have a number of other shows with it, I'll come. So I thought about it. So I built this itinerary that started in Albury to Griffith to Canberra to Wollongong and ended up in Cairns, 22 shows. So I went back to Billy and his manager, Michael Browning, and said, here's 22 shows. Is that enough? And they were like, okay.
What I love about that story is that back in the day, that was not normal because anybody from a good family went to uni because that's just what you did, and it doesn't matter what you did.
And it was what was expected of me.
Exactly.
My parents expected me to go to university. My grades were okay, but I couldn't find the challenge. I couldn't find the challenge. I was restless, uncertain, insecure, had no idea what I wanted, and I wasn't prepared to do anything until I knew what I wanted.
And in these days where the majority of kids have no idea what they want to do, very few know that they want to do whatever it is. So this story actually is great for them because what you're saying is you will find yourself.
I do a lot of mentoring. I was made adjunct professor of Arts and Entertainment faculty at Queensland University of Technology, which is really a great honour.
Absolutely.
And I go up and I talk to these kids. Sometimes I like the small groups, maybe 10 or 12 to talk to them. But sometimes there's 300, you're going to talk to them. So at first I really struggled in the large groups because I knew what was coming. After I'd told them who I am and what I did and what I'd learned, it's like, yeah, great, how do I get a job? That's all I want to know. How? Because I don't think the university teaches that. And I tried to work out. I tried to say, well, I sort of stumbled around, and then I came across the saying with some. It's called "the job finds you." So that, and I really like that. So it's like, how do I get a job? Well, the job finds you. What does that mean? Well, okay. You do it. You find the job yourself. No one's going to give it to you. You get out, you meet people, you go to Queensland Performing Arts Centre or any of the bodies. Be a volunteer. Get your foot in the door. Do anything. Sweep the floor. Whatever it takes. Get in there and meet people and find your point of difference and always follow. What's your point of difference? Well, you could start with manners. Please and thank you. That sets you apart. Present yourself well. Don't be late, be early. Early is on time. These sort of things are what sets you apart. So that's what I started talking about. And these kids started responding. I get it. The job finds me. I've got to get out there. I've got to network. And all these things that you can do today that you couldn't do when I was a kid. Create your own network. Get your LinkedIn page. Tell the stories. Make them up.
Yeah. And there are very few people that have the innate ability to work this out for themselves. So you spelling it out like that, it's a huge service.
It's really simple. I think today it's instant gratification for everything. It comes from the media that we watch or the radio or anything that's going around. It all has to happen now. But the truth is, life doesn't happen now. Life's a journey and you learn every step of the way. And you've got to take control of yourself. I think one of my greatest regrets is I really didn't work out who I was till mid-30s. I was just the lucky guy. And the truth is, the lucky guy, eventually luck's going to run out.
Maybe.
Mine didn't, because I worked out that it's not about luck. I actually got put in a situation with Elton John in 1984, which was my fifth tour with Elton John. And that all been, I was lucky. I got through, organised everything, but that tour was really intense. There was a lot going on. He was at the peak of his crazy time. He got married. There was just pressure, intense pressure on everybody, and all that pressure fell on me. And I got through it. I fixed the problems, all these dramas that happened. I fixed them.
You took them and fixed them, or there was nobody else doing it, so you knew that you had to. The buck stopped
with me. If I didn't fix them, the two would have fallen apart.
Right. So it was, mother was a necessity of invention for you at the time.
There can only be, in an environment like that, there can only be solutions, and if you can't provide them, you need to go away.
Yeah.
So I provided the solutions, I made everything happen, and at the end, I thought, you've got this unique ability to fix things, fix people, fix problems, solve problems, make things happen, survive pressure, survive stress, and come out of it okay. And that I started thinking, I've got to take more control. It can't just be about luck. I didn't do these things because I was lucky. I did these things because I've learnt what to do and know what to do. And making those decisions kind of opened the world to me. All of a sudden, I could do anything I wanted.
And what a fabulous thing to discover, because now that you say it, we assume that people who are out in front are the smartest, the wisest, and would fix their own problems. Like Elton John, are you kidding me? What could he possibly want for? And yet, it took someone else to fix what he needed fixed at the time.
Well, simple things. I want to get married. It's like, okay, when you want to get married? Next week. Well, let me have a look here. Okay, it's whatever it was. 8 weeks, 10 weeks.
And they didn't have gay marriage at that time.
No, he married Renata.
Yes.
But
did that surprise you?
Oh, nothing surprises me. No, it didn't surprise me.
Fair enough.
She was on the tour. They were happy. They got married. But he wanted to get married. The following week in New South Wales, it was like 8 weeks to get a marriage license. So, he says, well, fix it. So what do? You ring the Attorney General and you say, hey, Mr. Attorney General, Elton wants to get married. I need a marriage license and I need it tomorrow or by Friday at the latest. It's like, are you crazy? I said, no, I'm not. Can I come and talk to you?
And we call that chutzpah.
Yeah, I know. We just got to do it.
Yeah.
So we got the marriage license and got married. But there was things that happened, we had on that tour, it was called Too Low for Zero. It had this amazing, one of the biggest lighting rigs of the time, and it was all made of triangles and steel. And what happened, it got lost. It got lost on the side of the airport in Auckland. And we had a show to do in Melbourne, and Elton's like, well, sorry, I either have my lighting rig or there's no show. Okay, so we're going to build a new lighting rig overnight. So I had a few mates. The late Ron Blackmore was an amazing production and concert promoter in Melbourne. I rang Ron and said, okay, so I've got the plans of these designs of London and all still. Who do you know that at 9 o'clock at night owns a steel warehouse who will open up and sell us all this stuff? He's like, leave it with me. And he was...
I love that.
Ron was a genius at this sort of stuff. So he found the guy, got him to the warehouse. We got the trucks there. We hired all these steel welders, and we had a hangar at Essendon at Tullamarine, and we laid everything out. And these guys worked all night until they dropped, cutting and welding and making these lighting rigs, which we got delivered to the venue up in the air, with the lights, and the show went on.
Fabulous.
It sounds easy, but Jesus.
Not that it sounds easy, but it's the attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we get this done rather than, shit, this is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
So it really is the attitude and what you say to yourself about different situations. Just get it done.
Solutions only.
So and again, it was relationships. You had relationships with people who could jump in and knew you would.
I have tons of silly stories. I'll go back to Elton again. In 1990, we were in Melbourne, flying to Perth for the next series of shows. We'd finished in Melbourne and everything was great. I'd hired a jet, private jet for Elton, was sitting out at the private strip in Essendon, and we had 4 limos. Fortunately, we had mobile phones we had the big bricks. we get in the car, we pull out, we're like literally 2 minutes away from the hotel, and I get a phone call. Look, I'm really sorry to tell you, but the jet that you've chartered, it belongs to Alan Bond, and it's just been repossessed. In fact, at this moment, it's taxiing on the runway and it's taking off, and you no longer have a jet.
Wow.
And we're like almost barreling onto the freeway. So another wonderful old friend of mine, Graham Fear, who sadly passed away 2 years ago, ran a company called Show Travel, and he was incredibly well connected. So I ring Graham, hey mate, I need a jet, I need it now, I need it on the strip in Essendon, we're on the way, we'll be there in 30 minutes. He's like, leave it with me.
Wow.
So he gets onto the charter companies, finds an HB7 owned by the ANZ Bank, I think it was actually had just finished service out there in the hangars and was available for charter, and they were pushing it out right now, and it will be there waiting for you when you arrive.
I love that.
This is an interesting one. So we get there, and cars pull up, we're on time, Elton's a time freak, everyone's buzzing, we get on, the 6 of us get on the plane, doors close, cheers, and we start taxiing out, and then we stop to allow whatever traffic, aircraft traffic is, and another dear friend sitting there, his name is Ken, and he was the sponsorship guy from Qantas, and he goes, well, while we're stopping, I'm going to go to the toilet. So he gets up, walks to the back of the plane, opens the door and goes, oh my God, there's just a hole. In the rush to get this out, they had not put the toilet back in. So if we would have taken off, we would have crashed.
Thank God.
So anyway, banging on the pipe, so turn around, go back. Elton's not happy. You can see him sort of starting to flare up, and Ken Gross goes, well dear, if you flew Qantas, this would not have happened. and Elton found that was funny. He's laughing, the mood's broken, the toilet gets installed, off we go to Brisbane.
In Jewish there's a saying, bashert. Bashert means it's meant to be. So he was supposed to go to the toilet.
Yeah, we were not meant to die that day.
Absolutely.
But, they're just silly things.
Do these things sometimes come to your mind at night as you're going to sleep or something, and just memories of a life that was?
I think I said, I kind of look at my life and it's like someone else did it. It's a 50-year period of all these, travels around the world and shows and people and craziness and no sleep. It's like this big maze.
And you really, if you're enjoying this interview, as I know you will be, you've got to Google Harley Medcalf, because you can't list, it would take the whole program to list the number of artists that he's actually worked with. So,
well, there's plenty, and you won't find much of me online, to be honest. I don't.
So let's go back to to Billy Connolly and your relationship with him, and how you come to be touring his artwork at the moment.
Well, my relationship with Billy Connolly came from the gentleman I mentioned earlier, John Reid. John Reid was Elton John's manager, Queen's manager. He was a shareholder in Duet when I joined the company, Duet Productions. And in 1979, the CompuTicket crash with Harry and Miller, we had just the night before done Rod Stewart at the Sydney Showground, and CompuTicket had all the money and they went bankrupt. So
God.
The company was decimated, and John said, look, you can have the desk and the phone, I don't need that, but I'm going to leave it to you. I'm not going to put any pressure on you. I'm like, it's yours. I'm done. But he stayed as a mentor and a quarterback for the company, and he would tell everyone he knew, if you're going to Australia, you work for Duet. And he was so powerful. Everyone's like, okay, if it's good for you, it's good for us. So he obviously continued to send Elton. He sent Queen back in 1985. He introduced me to Lionel Richie, to Michael Flatley, and he set me up as Barry Humphries' manager and producer in the late 1980s. And that was a relationship that lasted 20 years. But in the middle, in 1984, he became Billy Connolly's manager. So we became Billy's promoter through that relationship with John.
And so, from rocky beginnings, you you now consider him one of your closest friends, and you're working.
I love Billy. I just adore Billy. He is one of the unique human beings in the world. He's a beautiful man. He gives everybody everything every day of his life, and that's a gift.
It really is, especially from someone who's been given so much. It's not usually the way they go. So when did he start drawing, painting?
Well, he started drawing in 2007. He was on a movie set in Toronto, and it was pouring down with rain, and everything was on hold. So Billy loves walking. It doesn't matter, rain, hail, shine. He does his walk. So he goes out and he spies an art shop. I'll just go in here and have a bit of a look. And he thought, I got nothing to do. So he bought some pads and pens and some sketching paraphernalia. And he went back to the hotel and he started to draw. And he thought, this is therapeutic. I like this. He kept drawing and drawing. And then Pamela saw it and said, hey, Billy, what you're doing is amazing. And then she showed it to an art dealer, a friend of theirs in London. They said, there's a market for this. This is incredible. So here we are, 8 series of Billy Connolly's editions later.
And some of the work, the drawings of people, actually kind of look like him.
Well, they've all got his view on life. Dogs bigger than people. The biggest thing on your body is your feet. All these Connolly-esque things that he would often talk about on stage, obsessed with feet. You see all that, and you see such joy and humour in the way you look, things like his sketch Raining on the Moon. It's just bizarre, but it's Connolly.
And you can own one yourself.
You can own a Billy Connolly. We have a website called bornonarainy.day.com.au, which is all about when his art started on that rainy day.
Fabulous.
And it's all there. You can have a look, and you can ring me up and talk to me, or
I'll absolutely put the website in with the biography and description of the show.
Yeah.
So he got involved in he set up his own foundation.
Billy?
Yes.
No, not Billy. That's Steve. We got the wrong Billy.
No, but doesn't the art proceeds from the artwork?
No.
Billy's artwork.
No, the art proceeds go to Billy. And a little tiny Scottish discount that I get goes to me.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So Steve Y.
Steve War is the foundation that I work with. He's another client. I went through 2 big sort of shake-ups in my thinking in my life. One was in 1984, and then in 1998 I got fired by Elton John. And that was a really dramatic event for me. Here was this actor who had defined the top end of my career. I'd done 8 tours with Elton. It was a fairly significant part of my life, and I loved that part of my life. And I had his manager, John Reed, who was mentoring me, and they broke up. Elton and John broke up originally they were lovers, and then it was a business relationship, and now that was over.
Wow.
And the ruling
No warning.
No. In fact, we found out, we went to see Elton perform in London after the Australian tour in 1998, which was a massive tour with Elton John and Billy Joel. Hugely successful. So we'll go and see the show in London. So off we go, and then we walked into the dressing room. I got a hug with Elton. How are you? I'm so happy you came. Where are you staying? Common question. I said, well, actually, we're staying in the cottage at John Reed's house. And he just turned around and walked out. What just happened? And then I get told, John and Elton are separating. The business relationship is over, so he does not like the fact you're with John. I said, well, I can't do much about it, Anyway, I got summoned to the lawyer's office, and I was told that you're
because you were friends with both of them.
You're friends with both. I was told you're either an Elton person or you're a John Reed person. You decide which. And that decision will then define any ongoing relationship. So said, okay, I'll come back and talk to you tomorrow. So I went home and I sat down with my wife Maria, and we talked about who we are and what it represents, and what are we going to do? What's our decision? And our decision was that we're friends with both. I can't walk away from John Reed,
which is right,
who'd given me so much. I can't just say to John, see ya, thanks, I'm going with Elton, and I couldn't say to Elton and be honest with myself, oh great, I'm going to dump John and come over. Because Elton insisted that I went to court on his side in the court case against John Reed. And it's like, but really? So we decided we're friends with both, but that wasn't good enough. So we were that day fired from Elton, and it was really dramatic for me.
I can imagine. What were some of the thoughts that went through your head when you realised that?
First thought, I've just given away millions of dollars worth of income. No, the first thought was, okay, well, you can define yourself in this. Let's look at what's important to you. You know, what's important. And
did you cry?
Oh, several times. And it really upset me because it affected my relationship with my peers and other people in the industry, and it's a big deal. But it's like, I feel it made me...
You couldn't talk about it with Elton directly?
No, lawyers only.
Only lawyers?
Lawyers only.
And you have an amazing relationship with your wife, so she was obviously there.
We both made this decision together because it was a big decision, but I actually feel that was the next defining moment in my life. Who I was, I'd made the decision based on what I believed in. And that includes, honesty, ethics, loyalty, friendship, family. And so I can't just divide this. I refuse to do it. I'll never forgive myself.
So you were able to talk it through and feelings and everything.
And I came out the other end and I thought, okay, I'm changing my life. I do all these things for other people. I give them everything when I work. But going forward, I want ownership. I want ownership of what I do. I want to own IP. I want to run and create my own events, and I want to be different. And that was another massive change of direction in my life, and that was the end of the 1990s. Now, I'd already started managing Barry Humphries a few years before that, and I was now producing his shows all around the world. I owned what I was doing. I was in a partnership with Barry. That was pretty good. I'd come up with this concept actually at Elton's 50th birthday party in London, which was a costume party, and unbelievably the entertainment was ballroom dancing. Now, why the hell would you have ballroom dancing in 1997 when it meant nothing to anybody? But Elton's a visionary.
Before the movie came out.
So Elton decided to have ballroom dancing. So you visualise this. We're in the Hammersmith Ballroom. There's 600 people there. Everyone's in costume, from Andrew Lloyd Webber to Queen to Rod Stewart to Billy Joel to Shirley Bassey. Anyone you could think of in the entertainment was there dressed in costume. And as the evening got to the sort of climax, this huge cake came out, and out of it leaps John Reed, happy birthday, and following him, 12 ballroom dancers. Now, there was so much, after John came out, the room went nuts, but all of a sudden these dancers came out, and they kind of electrified the place. So these young, good-looking kids, not doing ballroom dancing that you thought in your mind, this crusty old couple, with fake makeup and wigs. These young kids, barely dressed at all, amazing bodies, and the room went nuts again.
Wow.
Sort of separated, and I'm kind of looking at this, and we'd just finished working a lot with Michael Flatley. And I thought, well, I can do something with this. So I went down and I spoke to these dancers, a couple of them were from Australia. They were young, 18, 19 and 20, and they were all competitive world championship standard dancers. But what's your life like? Well, I have 3 jobs. I wash dishes, I clean this house with this lady, I do this or that. I need to earn money to pay my teacher, who is also the judge of the next competition, so I can be favourably looked at and improve my technique. So they're living these amazing lives, and it was all about commitment and work ethic and history and art form, things that I love. So I thought, they said, come and watch us. We're at the Royal Albert Hall next week. We're going to organise you to come to the show. So I went to see the British Open in Royal Albert Hall, and there was these young kids, this amazing talent, but the kind of spotlight was about 2 feet behind them. The lighting was terrible. The costumes were like just so garish and so much makeup and fake tan. I thought, let's revolutionise this. Let's make it rock and roll. So I hired a few friends who were great rock and roll designers. I'm going to create this show, and that's how Burn the Floor started. That was 1998 we started touring in 1999, and here we are 25 years later. I got 93 dancers in the company.
Wow.
Every day of the year there's at least 3, sometimes 4 Burn the Floor shows somewhere in the world. Every single day now.
But it didn't take in Australia? Because you're bringing it back now.
We're bringing it back with a twist. But yeah, we've toured here 8 times. We do well here. We're really great following. I've created an indigenous version.
Awesome.
I found this guy called Mitch Tambo, just looking online, who was singing You're the Voice in his own language. It's like, oh my God, I want to meet this guy. So I rang him up, as I do, and introduced myself and said, I love Burn the Floor. You know Burn the Floor? I said, yeah, I love Burn the Floor. I love what you do. I said, well, I love what you do, and I want us to conspire to create an indigenous version of Burn the Floor. Your music, our music, your choreography, our choreography. Let's mix it up and create. We created this show called Wallumbah Eulogy, and that starts next year in Australia, in Melbourne, actually, in Crown.
Definitely looking forward to seeing it.
It's going to be amazing. I mean, but it's that sort of, I like reaching out to people. We mentioned Steve Waugh before, and in my
Yes, let's go back there.
In my late 90s, when I was like, you need to do things that are yours, that challenge you, that are different. And so a friend of mine said, I met Steve Waugh the other day. He's in a bit of a mess. He's captain of Australia, number 1 cricketer in the world. He wants a new manager. So I thought, you got his number? So I just rang him up. So, hey Steve.
I love that.
My name's Harley Medcalf. I work in the entertainment industry, and I heard that you're looking for a manager. And he said, well, why would I talk to you? I'm looking for a sports manager. And I said, no, you're not, Steve. You're looking for someone who's going to put sport and entertainment together and own that space. And that's me. And he goes, well, that's different. let's meet up. We met 3 times. And he asked me, first off, well, what's important to you in life? And I know now what's important to me is by the end of the 80s, I knew, commitment, hard work, honesty, transparency, family, legacy. And he goes, you got me at legacy. So we started a relationship which is 23 years later today, going really well. He's an amazing person.
And you've done a couple of projects with him, and he has a foundation.
Yeah, he has the Steve Waugh Foundation, which was started. I mean, you think of Steve Waugh and think he's got a charity in India. Well, he does. He started funding a charity in Calcutta called Udayan, which is for young girls from leper colonies.
Wow.
So take a leper colony, they look after the boys because they can earn money. They sell the girls at 6 years old, 8 years old to get money, sell them to someone to put them on the street. So Udayan was a home for boys. So he said, well, I want to build a home for girls here at Udayan as well. So he built a wing for 200 girls, which today has been running for all these years. And that's what everyone thinks it's a Steve Waugh charity. But in Australia, when he retired, he wanted to start a charity here. And he and his wife Lynette really researched, and they found a gap in the market with kids with rare disease. Like, I'm talking the rarest of rare disease. No diagnosis, no funding.
Wow.
Short life prognosis, no funding. Too difficult, no funding. Don't understand, no funding. You need the money now, no funding. So he started this foundation, which I joined in 2004. today looks after 3,300 kids with rare disease in Australia.
Amazing.
And it's an amazing, and typical war, it's all below, no one knows, all below the radar. He doesn't care about that.
And that's the thing. There are so many people who really need help. I mean, to think in this day and age, there are girls that are sold onto
India,
the street, especially.
It's just the way it is.
Even in India, as you say.
No money. But here, if your child has a rare disease, they're like the orphans of the health system. You can't. A lot of them, no prognosis. No one knows what your disease is. It's so rare. That's amazing, but sorry, because it can't get a diagnosis, you can't get funding. Oh, really?
And how many have they managed to diagnose or help or put?
Well, we've got 3,300 that we look after, and once you're a recipient of the foundation, we did say 25, but initially kids 0 to 25. We've now got kids who've been with us past 25. We'll stay with them. And we have 3 grant rounds a year, and we add around 100.
You match them with doctors, or you find...
mostly, interesting, we've got, most of it comes from the hospital system. So the hospital system know the families, know the circumstances, know the problems, know the prognosis.
Know to contact the foundation.
And they know about us. So, they come to us and say, look, there's this family here, they've got a child who's got often a disease that you can't even pronounce, and they're working 2 jobs and they're in trouble. We can help.
We can help. And do you look at them and actually help with things like what they need to actually live, as well as their medical treatment?
Oh, absolutely. It's not about the medical treatment's easy. Medication is expensive. But so are batteries for the machines that keep these kids alive. So simple things, batteries. You don't think about batteries can be thousands of dollars a year.
Right.
These families can't afford hardly to put food.
Yep. So you cover everything.
Well, we've got my favourite girl. She's bedridden. She's never been out of bed in her life. She can barely talk, and her lungs need to be pumped constantly to remove the fluid, constantly. So there's a computer out there that you can communicate through your eyes. So you focus on A, or you want to say H, you focus on the E, L, L, O, and you press the button and it says hello.
Wow. And so
she communicates.
You and Steve actually get involved with the individuals in your...
Well, Steve and Lynette, my job's fundraising. I like doing events and raising money.
But it sounds like you obviously get...
I love meeting the families. We have this thing called Rare Starter every year where we bring a lot of families together. We haven't been able to do it in COVID. We can't do it this year because it's still risky for these kids to travel. They're very susceptible. But you'd get 100 families from all around the country would come together with their kids. You get to meet the kids, which is great. So the parents get to meet other parents and realise they're not alone.
So just going back to your other life, you've said that sometimes today you find it amazing that you actually lived through some of the experiences and people that you met in circumstances, and it doesn't quite seem real and you were actually there. Do you remember at the time when you were actually living it, did you... I guess what I want to know is a series of things, starting with, did your parents finally relax? Did they get to meet some of these celebrities?
That's a great question. My parents are horrified, really. They had dreams of my name up on the legal building or whatever it was. And here I was, running around a bunch, and I had a party at home with Billy Thorpe. I lived with my parents at the time, and Billy brought all these people. It was loud and noisy. My mother loved it. My father not so much. So they were like a bit strange about what was going on. But then in July of 1974, I got to tour manage Frank Sinatra. And when I announced that, it was like, oh, you mean the Frank Sinatra? And suddenly here was something they could talk to their friend. What's your son doing? Oh, let's not talk about that. What's your son doing? He's working with Frank Sinatra. And all of a sudden...
And you took them to the concert.
I took them to the concert. And all of a sudden, it was okay. Or my dad would still say, this is great. This must be exciting for you, but in your spare time, study for a trade, something that you can fall back on when all this ends.
And you were never worried about yourself?
Well, I never really thought about it, to be honest. At that stage, I'm the lucky guy. I'm getting paid to do something which is a lot of fun and supposedly glamorous and whatever. So I wasn't worried about it at all. It didn't worry me. Everything just sort of kept rolling on.
And you, during those really great high times, were there low times as well? Were there disappointments?
Oh, look, no, not in those times. As I said, I'm lucky. Everything's great. Life is amazing. I'm flying all around the world. I'm on private jets. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I didn't think about it other than the fact, God, I'm so lucky. Where did all this luck come from? I'm lucky. It wasn't till later in life when, you get fired by Elton John and then you get an email from Barry Humphries after 20 years saying, I no longer require your services. Those sort of disappointments, and I had a fight with Susie Quattro and she wasn't working with me, and they start to weigh you down eventually and must come.
And because you're built on relationships, it wasn't just being fired from a job. There was a whole emotional thing.
Fired from the lifestyle, from your life, being separated from what you do and feeling disrespected or just out of place. And I had a really bad time. I just turned 60 when Barry Humphries fired me, and I found that was the one that's going to push me off the edge. I had a couple of years where all I could do was think about all the bad things in my life, not all the amazing things I was doing. I was more fixated on that, and in the end, my wife said, you got to go to a therapist. It's like, I don't need a therapist, Maria. I said, yes, you do. So I sort of spoke to my doctor. I got a number, and I sort of lost it a couple of times. And then I sort of realised, I think you might.
Won't hurt.
It won't hurt. And that was tough. She knew straight away which buttons to push. And
very lucky you found a good one.
Yeah, she was good. The first month I was a mess, and then on week 6 she said to me, Harley, you are who you are. You are your work. Get on with it.
So, and that sort of kicked you into gear again?
It kicked me into gear. It's just, I am my work. I am what I do. And I've always had a supporting family. But you're right. I am who I am. Just get the hell on with it and stop fretting.
So I have to ask you, because I do a lot of stuff about mental health and how to get back into a good place where you realise that you are responsible for what you do and what happens to you.
Totally responsible.
And one of the things that, just common sense, when you're feeling fantastic, make a list of 10 things that make you feel good.
Yeah.
So whatever it may be, from playing with your dog to music to whatever. And you can only do that when you're feeling good. So when you talk about going from, I'm lucky, you've been lucky all your life, and then something hits you and you say, I could only see the dark side and the bad stuff.
It was like
Can
my
you
head was...
talk about that a bit more, because
it's like my head was back to front. Here I am doing these incredible things, but I can't see it. I'm still fretting about Elton John and Barry Humphries and all this shit that upset me. And it really took that...
how do you get that out?
Well, the therapist got it out of me pretty quick. She cracked me right open. I cried for a week.
And then it really is you switching yourself inside.
The therapist pushes the buttons, but you've got to be able to make those decisions and understand them and move forward in a positive way. And after 6 weeks, I was told, you don't need any more therapy.
I love that.
Just get on with your life and do what you do, and stop fretting about all this stuff. It's irrelevant.
And focus on all the good stuff.
And I'm a strong person, but that was saying, you're right. That was a
Fabulous.
big thing. It was a big thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing it. And I've got 15 other questions, but we're running out of time because it's only an hour show.
Yep.
So thank you so much for sharing, and looking forward to burn the floor with the Australian twist.
Yeah, with Mitch. It's going to be special.